Good morning and welcome to the SEC Daily. Joining me today will be my friend Olin Buchanan at TexAgs. Known this guy a long time, one of the best dudes in the media business. He's got a few things to cover that we'll get into. Once we're done with that, we'll get into Mississippi State and LSU and look ahead to the weekend. But first, my friend Olin joins us. Got to see him at SEC Media Days in Nashville, which was quite the event. Hey, my man, good to catch up with you again. I reached out to you last week to come on our show, and honest to God, I thought the topic would be maybe a little different than what we're going to cover today. And
Honest to
I'm
God, I
guessing
thought
I'm not
so
the only
too.
one. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the great thing about college football. It can be very unpredictable.
Yeah. Well, and to that, I just think, again, I don't like the way things are made with the constant transfers. I'm not against the player's right to better's opportunity, all those things, but it just made a mess of the game in so many ways with tampering and all sorts of things. At the same time, though, man, you look around the college football landscape this last weekend and you look ahead, and it's getting more towards an NFL like parity. I think maybe times. Is that a fair way to put it, or am I overdoing it here?
No, I think that's fair. I think that we all have seen this. Teams get better faster. It used to be that, hey, if you had a bad year, you're probably looking at a long climb back. But now, you can identify some problems, and you don't have to try to develop a freshman at that area. You can get a guy out of the transfer portal. Look what Ken Coleman has done for Florida State. Not that they weren't
Yeah.
good anyway, but then if you're a really good team, you can add a piece here and piece there and get really good. So it's free agency to a certain extent. I think I think a lot of teams are going to be able to get guys based on guys they need. Based on an NIL package. I heard a story last year that a tight end from Utah was offered, and believe me, I don't take everything I hear to be absolutely true, because there were some things said around A&M and NIL that were just ridiculous. But there was supposedly a tight end from Utah that was offered $1 million deal. He'd transfer to a certain SEC program. He didn't, but the word was out there that he did. Now, I'm not saying again that he was offered $1 million. Somebody offered me $1 million, I'd take it. But that's out there, and I think it'd be naive to think that guys don't transfer certain places because, quite frankly, they can get a really good NIL deal.
Yeah. Let's talk A&M. A&M was a single-digit favorite going into Miami, a Miami team that just, A&M had a rough year. Miami said, hold my beer, and just face planted, was losing to everybody left and right at the end of last season. Seems like Miami's maybe turned it around. Van Dyke was tremendous. I'm sure everything is calm and normal in your corner of the world this morning coming out of that one, right?
There's a lot of anger in College Station. I was on a flight back to Houston, coming back from Miami, and there was a lot of anger on that flight. Think of somebody that if you invested, millions of dollars in a company that wasn't performing, you might be angry. So yeah, there's without a doubt a lot of anger among the fan base now. That can change fast. I don't know that you mail in the rest of the season because of a week 2 loss. In most cases, you would say, okay, let's see what they do from here, and that's the case A&M too. However, it's been this. If they have a subpar season, it's going to be 3 in a row now. And when you're starting to, I was talking to a guy at work, and he pointed this out. In the last 17 games, which would equate to like an NFL season, but the last 17 games, A&M is 7-10, and 4 of those wins are over New Mexico, Massachusetts, Sam Houston, and somebody else of that ilk, but not Appalachian State. So they've been very underwhelming, whereas they should not just expect more, they should demand more because of all that they put into this program. There's a lot of loyal Aggies,
Yeah.
and they have they always make an emotional investment in the program. They've made a significant financial investment in the program, and they will love their coach as long as they feel like he's getting the job done. And now they're starting to feel like, what's the return on this investment?
Yeah. What is the bar of expectations going forward with the loss in the rearview mirror?
Uh, it should be, like I said, it should be a demand, and it should be, hey, we expect you to figure this out uh, right away. Should have figured it out in the second half of last week, but we expect you to figure it out and go on a roll like it. In 2020, A&M lost the second game to Alabama. They came right back the next week and beat Florida. And that was a good Florida team. That was the Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Tony Florida team. And they came back and beat them and went on a roll and didn't lose the rest of the year. You can say, well, that was the COVID year. Hey, that Florida team was really good, and they had to come to A&M, and there was only 25,000 in the stands, and that was a good football team. That was a good win. That was a bounce back, and that was a legitimate victory. And then they had a really good year. So they almost did that in 2021. You'll remember they had lost to Mississippi State. They had lost to Arkansas. They looked terrible beating Colorado, but then they came back and beat Alabama. And they won about 5 in a row. Auburn was ranked when they beat them, but then I'll try to say this in a nice way. Then they disappointed in a loss to Ole Miss and LSU. So if you can come back, I think the expectations are, the demands are, you need to figure this out and win some damn football games.
Yeah.
Against good teams, not the, it was very frustrating for a lot of Aggies last year. They beat UMass, and they didn't even beat them bad. And Jimbo Fisher said, "Hey, this is a great win." Whoa, wait a minute. Let's slow down. You don't call a win that you're supposed to get a great win, especially when you don't just blow that team off the field. That said, the next week they came back and beat LSU. So I think there's tons of frustration about that loss to Miami, and that being just another one of many games where your team just didn't look prepared. You played like dogs.
By the way, barking dogs are a part of show culture at this point. So, we haven't heard from mine, which is a little bit of an upset at this point, but the show's not over yet. So
let's see if they can't turn it around. And the frustrating thing as someone that covers A&M for a long time is you hear, well, Miami's really good. That may be true. So are you only expecting to beat teams that aren't really good?
Yeah.
Because you've made the investment to be a championship caliber team. And oh, by the way, championship caliber teams beat really good teams.
I'm going to paraphrase something that Gary Parrish says all the time on his college basketball podcast. And it's basically once these conversations start happening of getting rid of our coach, it's really hard to reel that back in as a coach, and you're kind of better off going somewhere else. Jimbo Fisher, I don't know what the number is, and that's where I'm going to go next. Isn't it just going to walk away from this job based on that buyout? What is it at the end of the year? Are there any technicalities that if you wait till after January the 12th, I'm just throwing a number out of thin air or whatever, that it lessens by X? How much is it? Can they pay it? If this does not go according to expectation, what does that look like?
I think, first of all, it's guaranteed unless, he did something non-football related, like maybe a certain Michigan State coach is being accused of. If it was something along those lines, and not even what like Tucker's being accused of, but something along the lines of, with cause.
Yeah.
But with the exception of that, his contract's guaranteed. So the money's guaranteed. And I believe look, I'm not saying I've got it exactly, the number exactly right, but I believe it's somewhere around $72 million after this season that you'd still owe him. Now, let's understand, there's an awful lot of wealthy A&M supporters that are billionaires with a B. So I would think that $72 million is too much of a buyout to make a change for a couple of years. There are others that I talk to that say, oh, no, that money is there. Now, I don't know if the people that I've talked to know what if they're really, if they have legitimate sources on that. But nothing surprises me in college football.
Yeah.
And A&M has money. They do have that.
Yes, it does have money. Now, what it didn't have on Saturday, to my surprise, was a pass defense. The defensive line has kind of come under a little bit of scrutiny. They've got 4 and 5 stars all over the place. There was a lot of buzz on Twitter about that group not producing. But like, if you'd said A&M's season goes wrong, Olin, I would have named you a few ways that it could go wrong, not stopping the run. They've not been great at that, but not awful either.
No, actually, they've been exceptional in 2 games against stopping the run.
Yeah, I mean, right.
It's like a whack-a-mole. Do you remember the old whack-a-mole game?
Yes.
So every time they hammer one problem, another one pops up. Last year, they couldn't stop the run. Well, those guys who are freshman defensive linemen that were so highly recruited. Well, they're ready to play. McKinley Jackson, who missed a lot of the season last year, defensive lineman, he's healthy, he's playing, and they have their linebacker play was bad, no doubt. They've got a freshman kid named Torin York who's come in and playing really well. So that run defense has gotten exponentially better. It's amazing how much better it's gotten. That's only 2 games in, but still, it's obvious that it's better. And then what do you know? The pass defense. I don't know if you saw the Miami game, but the tackling in the secondary was atrocious.
Yeah.
Miami had 241 yards after the catch. Think about 241 yards. That almost seems like that you don't.
That's hard to do.
If you throw for 241 yards as a quarterback, you had a good game. That's just after the completion. So, yes, some guys are going to have to answer some questions. They're going to have to prove their desire. They're going to have to prove their ability. And quite frankly, DJ Durkin, the defensive coordinator, I think he has to prove himself because so far, now he gets the vote of confidence from Jimbo Fisher twice, one time last year. And maybe moving forward, that vote of confidence that he's given in DJ Durkin, that will be proven to be the correct, the correct approach, and that we'll find out that DJ Durkin's actually is doing a good job. But based on the fact that last year you were one of the worst run defenses in the country, and now you got guys that are getting torched in the secondary, and when they don't get beat deep, they can't make the tackle. And I'm sure Miami has some guys that will probably as receivers that will play in the NFL, but I didn't see anybody that I thought, man, that's a first round pick that's going to be playing for 10 years. And yet they made A&M look silly in the secondary. So that was a glaring blemish on the defense last week.
I love the whack-a-mole analogy.
Yeah, I think I might use it in column tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I mean, that one's been used, I think, here before. But let me ask you this: to stick with that, is it just me, or does that not seem a little bit like, okay, you got whack-a-mole, you got the 9 holes or whatever? That almost seems to me like, because correct me if I'm wrong, the team you cover much better than I do. Secondary was supposed to be their strength. I mean, that's like playing whack-a-mole, and all of a sudden there's like a 10th hole over here that you didn't know about almost.
Oh, I was blindsided by that. Look, here's the deal with the secondary. Now, look, they were number 1 in the country in pass defense last year. That was a mirage. We knew it. It was, of course,
because teams can run.
Everybody wants to run. Okay, That said, Damani Richardson's a super senior. He decided to come back for another season. That was at safety. Jardine Gilbert's a starter that came back. So your safeties were intact. Bryce Anderson, who's your nickelback, I mean, there's a guy who's probably the best athlete. He was behind Antonio Johnson last year, but when he played really well. So you're feeling good about him. Tariq Chappelle is a 3-year starter. He's a junior, but started since his first game, I believe, as a freshman, or since early in his freshman year. He's a starter at one corner. Well, you had to replace a corner. Well, you brought in Tony Grimes from North Carolina. You brought in Sam McCall from Florida State, and you brought in Josh DeBerry from Boston College, who won the starting job. So you look at that corner, and you think, all right, there's plenty of depth there. You had 3 new guys come in, not to mention, freshman guys that part of the recruiting class. They had a couple of freshman corners, highly rated, or just some of the guys that were still here. So on paper, it looked the secondary looked really good. On the Hard Rock Stadium playing surface, they didn't look good at all.
We haven't talked offense yet. I think Connor Wegman has looked really good. Maybe seemed like maybe one of the turnovers wasn't his fault or some tough luck there. You saw it, and I didn't see all of it. Receiving core really good. I mean, I don't think this is all gloom and doom for them. I think that I don't think the secondary can play that badly again. I think I see some improvements in their offense. I'm really interested to see how this works out because I think they got some pieces on offense.
They do, and I think the Bobby Petrino influence, you can see that it's a more efficient, more productive offense than it was last year when, again, the whack-a-mole offense was a big issue last year. And so they brought in Petrino, and, it was New Mexico. We get it in the season opener. They scored 52 points, though. Last year in the season opener against Sam Houston, they had 31. And they scored 33 against Miami. Now you can say, well, they had a block punt, and Miami also fumbled a punt, so they got good field position. Okay, but they still capitalized on it and got into the end zone. And then, one time they drove the length of the field. It looked like they were going to go up 14-0, and on a third and 5, they throw to their best receiver. He catches it 2 yards short of the first down, but it's there. I mean, all you got to do is cut up, and you've got the first down and maybe the touchdown if you'll just catch the ball and cut up toward the end zone. But instead, he continued to run laterally and tried to dance around a defensive back and got tackled. And let me stress again, if you didn't see it, if all you have to do is cut up, there wasn't anybody close to him, and it's either an easy first down and maybe a touchdown. Instead, you settle for a field goal. Then their first series of the second half, they drive down, and they're looking at 4th and 1 at the 1 yard, 4th and goal at the 1 yard line, and they're going to go for it. And an offensive tackle jumps. Well, you have to settle for a field goal there. So they scored 33 points, and they left points out there. Connor threw 2 interceptions. One, he was throwing to Aniyah Smith. The turf was a little bit soggy, A&M had problems with it. Aniyah fell down. The ball went right where he would have been, right into a safety, and Miami turned it into points. And then his second turnover was on a 4th down. He was under pressure. It was late in the game, and he was just throwing something up to see if, maybe they get lucky, and they didn't. So Connor Wigman is playing great, and I believe Connor Wigman is going to be A&M's best quarterback since Johnny Manziel, and that sounds great, but it's the bar. I'll admit the bar's been set. That sets the bar kind of low, because with the exception of 1 year with Trevor Knight and probably one good year with Kellen Mond, A&M's really had very mundane quarterback play. But Connor Wigman, he is a reason, and that receiving core is a reason to say, hey, this team may be able to pull out of the doldrums because they do have offensive threats.
Olin, how do you evaluate their running game at this point? And does Reuben Owens become a bigger part of this? I know he didn't do much at Miami, but does he become a bigger part of this going forward?
I think so, especially when one of the older guys, Amari Daniels, who has the ability to make a big play, but on 3rd and 1 at a key juncture in the second half, he didn't pick it up and then fumbled, and back in A&M's end of the field, and it leads to a big Miami touchdown. If you can't have fumblers, and I think Reuben in a very small sample size has flashed a couple of times. He had a nice catch early in the game out of the backfield against Miami for about a 20-yard gain. He had a nice run, a couple nice runs against New Mexico again, an overmatched opponent, but he looked pretty good as a true freshman. And I would suspect that moving forward, they'll use him more. They've never been afraid to use freshmen. Isaiah Spiller started, I think, 8 games as a freshman in 2020, and when Devon Achane was a freshman, they didn't start him, which was a mistake. But they let him play a lot. So I think you'll see more of Reuben moving forward.
Looking around the West, I think one more thing that you have to take as encouragement if you're Texas A&M is, hey, this has all looked not according to plan most places. I mean, Ole Miss might be the one exception, but you look around the West, LSU had that ugly loss to Florida State. Alabama had that thing against Texas this weekend. Mississippi State nearly blew a big lead. Arkansas can't run the football all of a sudden. Auburn, has to rely on missed field goals to win at Cal, gets 14 points. Who am I missing? Well, anyway, Ole Miss goes and gets a backup quarterback, but also had a lot of guys. Ole Miss might be the one school that says, "Hey, wait a minute, we're not undershooting expectations given what's going on." But haven't seen what's going on in the West and maybe how there's been some ugliness there that we didn't expect most places. How do you evaluate the West at this point and A&M's place in it this year?
Well, I think everybody says it's wide open, right?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, the feeling was that last year LSU lived what should have been A&M's season. I mean, think about this. A&M, we're talking about last year for just a second. A&M was 2 yards away from beating LSU and Alabama, and had they done it, they still wouldn't have finished first in the SEC West. It's wide open, and I think that's part of the frustration about the way A&M looked against Miami, because you're looking around and saying, if not this year, when?
Yeah.
Because you do have all those guys from that 2022 recruiting class ranked number 1 in the nation that are ready to play. You do have a good quarterback. You should have a better offensive line. You should have a better defense. You see Alabama doesn't typically struggle. And I think by the time the season's over with, Alabama's going to win 10 games, 9 at least, right? So they're not a bad football team at all. They're going to be a contender, and I'd probably still pick them to win the West. But how often do you see Alabama at this vulnerable? And you get them to come to your place, right? And you get them to come to your place. Mississippi A&M, if you really pay attention, A&M, one of the places where they just can't win is Mississippi State. Starkville is like kryptonite to A&M, and yet, the Bulldogs come to the Kyle Field this year. What I'm trying to say is, I guess, is Auburn does too. The schedule is as advantageous as you can ever hope for when you play in the SEC West.
Yeah.
So you see what's going on in the West, and you're thinking, it's there. There is a great opportunity to show that, or to take a big step forward and actually go out and not just hope to win the West, but expect to win the West. And then you go out and you play like you did against Miami.
Well, this probably isn't going to make our A&M audience super happy, but got to ask. I mean, what happened in Texas this weekend against the backdrop of what happened in Miami? or not what happened in Texas, what happened in
Tuscaloosa.
Tuscaloosa for
Yeah.
Texas is what I meant to say. I mean, look, you see this at Auburn and Alabama all the time. Auburn's had some pretty decent football coaches and won a lot of games, but you got Nick Saban over across the way, losing one game in an average year, and that sort of ratchets up expectations. I can't help but think that what happened this weekend with Texas going in, and I don't know how much you got to see. Texas, I don't know if domination was the right word, but Texas was clearly better. And I thought it when the game was still in the balance, when I think even after Alabama had taken the lead on that bomb late, I still thought, there's not a place on the field where I don't see Texas being better. How much does that change things at Texas A&M? Because I'm sure that didn't just happen in a vacuum.
Yeah, Aggies noticed.
Yeah.
And they're saying like, now wait a minute, hold up here. We're in the 6th year with Jimbo Fisher, and they're in their 2nd year or 3rd year. I've already forgotten how long Sarkisian's been there, and they look like a team. A couple of years ago, Texas' offensive line was putrid,
Yeah.
and just in a couple of years, I mean, that looks like a dominant offensive line. So again, what's going on? To your point, it adds to the frustration that where is Texas A&M as a program right now? Look, maybe the Miami game was you just came out and you had one of those games where you played poorly and you're going to get it figured out. But it's it can't be ignored that you went out and played a team when you were favored, and they schooled you at Miami. I think Miami outcoached A&M, every way possible. And then you go out and you see what Texas did to Alabama, and Aggies, like I said, they should demand more. They should demand more because you've had for the last 5 or 6 years, A&M's program has been, without a doubt, superior to Texas. And has Texas gone by this? Has Texas passed you by this fast? And if so, why? And why isn't Jimbo Fisher and getting the job done more? Now, look, if they go on a roll, if they beat, they're going to beat ULM. I feel confident. But if they beat ULM and Auburn and Arkansas, and then Alabama comes down and win that, hey, then all's forgiven. But you start to wonder is how long do you have to say, we'll get them next year?
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking at the schedule to my right here. Sorry, there was a small delay here. You past ULM, 2 of those next 4 games are a similar situation of, hey, this guy over here is getting it done in year X. Why isn't our guy getting it done in year 6? And what I mean by that is you got Auburn coming up in 2 weeks. First year under Hugh Fisher. Hugh Freeze. Yeah, who knows at this point, right? And then you've got Tennessee October 14th. Now that's in College Station.
No,
but again, the speed at which I'm sorry, that's in Knoxville. You're right. The speed at which Josh Heupel has turned around that program obviously has been a talking point too. So I'm looking ahead, and you got 2 more of those games coming up, staring A&M in the face, where the comparisons are going to be dropped if it goes poorly.
Right. So you better start winning.
Right.
Now, that said, if you didn't have a $72 million buyout, I mean, the SEC is the conference that fires national championship coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think Gene Chizik, Philip Fulmer, Ed Orgeron. There's probably another one in there.
Yeah.
And I think what you have to do is you have to hope that Jimbo Fisher starts coaching at a level that merits the kind of contract he has.
Yeah.
And if he does, then again A&M can get on a roll and all's forgiven.
Yeah.
But again, when is that? Look, the first 3 years here, everybody was happy with. They were thrilled with Jimbo. He could have been the mayor. you said, okay, in 2020, all right, he lost his starting quarterback. Okay, last year, all right, they had a crazy amount of injuries. Okay, but you can't just keep coming up with an excuse. And
Yeah.
now it's really kind of put up or shut up time. Now I'm not saying that he'll get fired, but I'm just saying that the Aggie population, uh, that frustration, I think, has reached peak level.
Well, it's interesting to me too, and I'll let you go here in a couple of minutes. But just being in the SEC ratchets everything up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but A&M pre-SEC was kind of a. I mean, of course, it's got a little fan base, but correct me if I'm wrong. A&M didn't spend anywhere near the kinds of sums of money that it spent the last decade before that. Am I right or wrong there?
You're dead on right.
Yeah.
A&M, I've always said it 100 times. A&M wanted to play at the $100 tables and bring a $100 bill. You know, they never wanted to make the real commitment that it takes to be an elite national championship contender. And they said, okay, you know, we're in the SEC. They had that Johnny Manziel year. Everybody got excited. They loved being in the SEC, part of the biggest conference, best conference in the country. Hey, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. And so they renovated Kyle Field, made it as beautiful a setting for college football as you'll find anywhere. They just finished building a huge indoor practice facility. They're constructing, as we speak, this enormous football center where everything from eating to training facilities to studying area to everything is all going to be under one roof. It's going to be enormous. They've gone all in. They've hired coaches at the top dollar. They've hired assistants. They've spared nothing. Everything you need and more to have an elite program. A&M provides that coach either through geography, because you're only an hour from Houston or an hour and a half from Houston, 2.5 hours from Dallas, and there's a heck of a lot of football players in those areas.
Yeah.
And so either through geography or resources and fan support, you have it. So at some point, you're going to have to start. Those fans, I think they deserve a return on that investment.
Olin, I feel confident we're going to have you on again at some point in football season, either because it's gone really well or because it hasn't, or who knows, maybe it's in between. They go 8-4 and nobody's happy. But
they've been willing to do that.
Right. What do you think this looks like, gut feeling, the rest of the way?
It looks like 8-4.
Yeah.
You know, I think they'll bounce back and win some games they're supposed to win. And you know, the MO is they'll win a game that you don't think they're going to win. It was 2021 against Alabama. It was LSU last year. So I mean, they have talent. That's the thing. They are loaded with really good football players.
Yes.
Coaches aren't getting it done. So I think that you'll see them probably win some games that they're supposed to win. They'll probably pull off a win that people don't think they're going to win, and then they'll, based on what we've seen historically in the last couple of years, they'll probably have a couple performances where they look like they did against Miami, and their coaches will not have that team ready to play. And 8-4 seems reasonable. Coming into the year, I would have said that the Aggies should demand, and I'm talking about their fan base, should demand a 10-2 finish. They could still get that, but they got to play a lot better and show a lot more want to than and the coaches are going to have to figure themselves out if they're going to have any chance to reach a 10-win season. And I'm talking about even 10 wins in a bowl game.
And it's hard to say this in the era, the transfer portal / NIL era, but you look up, they got a lot of dudes coming back next year. I could totally see this going 8-4 and 2024 becomes national title or bust. Am I seeing that wrong?
If the guys stay around, but you know what? Again, you probably have to have the same coaches, and I think they're the ones that's the reason that these guys are struggling. You know, I mean, I can't tell you what they're doing wrong other than never rush 3 because you don't have because you're not helping your DBs at all, and they need some help. But and DJ's done that too often. But you know, Chris, you said next year. A&M has heard next year so many times that next year was last year. When does next year get here? How often do you keep putting it off? It's like for years I put off. I always say I want to go to a destination. I want to fly to a destination Jimmy Buffett concert. I kept saying I'll do it next year. I'll do it next year. I'll next year. Well, now I'm never going to do it. When is next year arrive?
Yeah. Fair point. Olin, you've been a tremendous guest. You're a good man, good friend. Tell folks where they can find your stuff at TexAgs and what you guys have coming this week.
Well, we'd appreciate if you give us a look. We think at TexAgs that we are the preeminent outlet for all things Texas A&M sports. So you can reach us at TexAgs.com. That's just an abbreviated version of Texas Aggies, TexAgs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at TexAgs. You can also follow me on Twitter at that name right there on the screen. I don't hide behind any pseudonyms or handles. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'd appreciate it if you would, or X, or whatever they call it these days.
Well, here's the good news for A&M fans. First of all, we're going to have you back at some point, hopefully soon. And second of all, I think if football doesn't work out, you're going to cover a tremendous basketball season.
Well, you know what? Hopefully they'll get both.
Yeah. Be good to see. Be good for our channel. Be good for yours as well, and your site and all those good things. You guys do a tremendous job at TexAgs. Thanks for joining us at a busy time, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
All right, Blake.
All right.
A lot to bite off there. That the comments were jumping and the questions. What stands out to you as you sort through all this?
Chris, I can't sort through all this at this very second. A lot of comments. I put as many as I could on the screen, but again, you heard it from someone who knows Texas A&M football as well as anybody, and I think that it will be interesting to see how things go from here, because we've brought up the same theme for how long now, and that loss just didn't help matters. So do things get better from here? And we'll find out. So again, guys, we appreciate you joining us here on the SEC Daily. Might not go as long today. We will touch on some quick kind of week 3 storylines here, Chris, as we start to look at those. There is a very noticeable delay here, I think, on Chris's side. So just so you guys know, there may be a little bit of a gap with that. But as always, you can leave a super chat, hit the subscribe button, all that. If you want your comment featured, you can leave a super chat to do that. That donates to the channel. So we appreciate you guys. Always hit that like button. That's an easy thing to do, and it helps out more people here to see the SEC Daily. So where do you want to go, Chris? Week 3 storylines.
Well, I'm sorry to hear we've got a delay, first of all, and I'm going to say a couple things to you. As I throw it back to you, I'm going to make one little tweak in my office that might help my connection speed. I do have some gear coming from AT&T that's going to help get a better signal in my house. I know, go ahead and laugh. It's like the Olin comment about next year. Next tomorrow is always here when it comes to my internet speed. But anyway, one thing before we jump into that, the Liam Cohen news, if people didn't catch that, Liam Cohen, who's Kentucky's offensive coordinator, who's back, he was with, I think, the Rams a year ago, was part of that offense. It was so good 2 years ago. Liam Cohen had a medical emergency and was taken to the hospital in Lexington yesterday. I think the expectation is he was going to be back, but we talk about job pressure. It is a factor pretty much at all 14 SEC schools, and I don't know what was behind that the episode, whatever that was, with Liam Cohen yesterday, but that was something that kind of popped up in the news between when we last broadcast and this today, and certainly our prayers with Liam Cohen and his family, and let's hope that's nothing serious.
Yep, agreed. I know more information continues to come in. Mark Stoops, like I said, commented on it, and I think so hopefully things moving in the right direction there for him. So Cats got Akron on Saturday, and of course, as always, we'll have some Kentucky football thoughts from Stuart Lackey, who helps us out Kentucky-wise. He and Chris will talk about that. Actually, maybe up this afternoon. So if you're a Kentucky fan, we could see that. If not, it'll be up Wednesday morning. That's definitely something of note. If you're looking for thoughts on the SEC games, as we said, we've already put out our prediction videos for the 3 big SEC games: LSU at Mississippi State, South Carolina at Georgia, Tennessee at Florida. Chris, I know you guys talked about all 3 of those games in depth, you and Blaine. But I guess, if you had to pick from those 3 games, to me, I think the most interesting thing I'm looking forward to seeing, which I think Tennessee could be a very obvious answer for a lot of people. I just want to see how LSU plays against Mississippi State. Because like we said, I don't think it told us a whole lot in terms of beating Grambling 72-10. They took care of their business. You give them credit for that after the Florida State loss. But I want to see this team go on the road and see how they play against a Mississippi State team that, yes, felt like they left some things on the table against Arizona, but still did, I thought, some good things that they could carry over here as a 2-0 team, hosting a team that has not exactly got off to the start that people expected, solely based on that Florida State game.
Blake, thank God the schedule gets a little more interesting this weekend. And I'll just give you some quick thoughts on some games as I look to my right down the schedule. So this is the order that I'm going in. It's basically, I'm looking at all those helmet schedules, and it goes east in alphabetical order, then west in alphabetical order. I think Florida, Tennessee is a fascinating game for a lot of reasons. I've been pretty steadfast in the belief Tennessee was going to go down to Gainesville and decisively take care of business. That said, all the computers disagree with me. Any Tennessee fan will remind you Tennessee's not won in the Swamp in 20 years. And frankly, in Knoxville, that game has gone sideways on the Vols a lot of times too, although Tennessee, of course, did win that one a year ago. And I've lost Blake here for a minute. There he is.
We're back.
Okay. This time it's you and not
me. Getting all, no,
yes.
we're getting all our technical issues fixed. So I had to hop out to fix a technical issue. So hopefully you guys are hanging in there, because this ain't a pretty one today.
The show bingo card, we've had the tech issues. We've checked that one. I'm surprised. Well, we did have a dog appearance, although in the upset of the century, it's not been mine yet. So those of you who are longtime listeners of the podcast will know exactly what we're talking about there. Georgia, South Carolina. I don't know. That's not a game that I circle as a takeaway game. I mean, of course you want to see it. If South Carolina, say, plays Georgia really close, and for the record, I think Carolina is going to play it closer than the 27 points or whatever that number is. But I don't know that I'll learn a lot about that game compared to others. Missouri, Kansas State. I'm afraid I know what we're going to get in that one from an SEC perspective. If Missouri is able to win, I think that's a program-changing win for the Tigers. Vandy, UNLV, not going to be a game that a lot of people circle. Vandy really got to get this one, though. And I think the spread is maybe 4 or 5 points in Vanderbilt's favor. If Vandy's going to have the kind of season it wanted to have, Vanderbilt's got to go to Vegas, and it is at Vegas, and get that one. Alabama, USF, non-starter. Arkansas, BYU. Again, we broke that one down. I think Arkansas wins. How it's going to look, anybody's guess, given the way those teams have been, especially Arkansas, has been erratic in terms of running the ball, or maybe I should say not running the ball. LSU, Mississippi State, to me, that's the game of the weekend, because I just want to know what we're getting with those two teams. And so if you had to pick one game to watch, Blake, and I know Florida, Tennessee is tempting for a lot of reasons, but to me, that's the game. Am I wrong?
I mean, you could be. I would, like I said, I'm mostly, I think LSU is the one for me that I want to see, because I think this is a game that if LSU doesn't come out and play well early on, Mississippi State takes control. I mean, again, I think you want to see how LSU responds to that, because we saw what the response was when things started going south in a hurry against Florida State. Now, Florida State may be the best team in the country at this point. I don't know if Mississippi State's quite there yet. So that's the difference. But this is a road game. The Cowbells are going to be loud, very, very loud. And I think this will be one, like I said, that is very fascinating for that reason. But yeah, that's the one I would circle. Although, again, you could also say kind of the same about Tennessee against Florida, because I think that there's a lot of meat on the bone in that one in terms of what you get from Florida. Is Tennessee, an elite team? I think, how they play against a team like this, to me, will tell us the answer to that question. And yeah, so I think those are the two that I circle the most. Not that I'm not giving Georgia a chance against South Carolina, but I feel like we always see Georgia start to turn a corner in terms of once you see them struggle a little bit, then when they turn it on, they really turn it on. And we've seen that before. And I wonder if this is the week where they do that. It won't be easy, but I'm very curious to see if they do that there. So,
Another one I didn't mean to gloss over this. I just don't think it's up on the hierarchy. I could see Georgia Tech, Ole Miss being a little bit more interesting. Tech's looked fairly solid out of the gates. Ole Miss has got some injuries, played a hard-fought game on the road last week. That one's at Ole Miss, and so that probably helps a little bit. But I think that the line on that's around 20, which seems like maybe a lot. But I mean, I say that given the way Ole Miss has put up points with the injuries, and there are still some injuries to that tight end receiving core this weekend. I'm a little bit intrigued by that one too. What are we still looking at a 20-point line on that one?
well, I'm glad you asked because I did not have that pulled up, but I will find it for you to see if that is the case. But yeah, I mean, look, Ole Miss was ranked 3 in our composite power rankings this week. Some of us had Ole Miss at 2. I think we have liked what we've seen from Ole Miss in comparison to some of the other teams that we haven't necessarily liked what we've seen from. And so I think it makes it easy to sort of buy in on Ole Miss at this point. And again, they've looked good. You can't deny it. They've looked good. So yeah, I think this will be. And Chris, I'm still scrolling, and I just can't find this easily on Vegas
No
Insider right
worries.
now. So I will have to find it another time. But yeah, I think it's one where once again, you want to see Ole Miss come out and handle their business. And then I think that keeps the momentum rolling in terms of the expectations for them moving forward. But they've looked really good so far. There's a reason they're in the top 20. And yeah, I like what I've seen from Ole Miss. But what do you guys have to say? Because again, we are going to wrap this up a little earlier than the 1 hour mark, guys, just due to some technical issues. We're not going to stay on here much longer today. But what do you want to discuss? If you have questions, thoughts on week 3 action, we will continue to discuss this again on the SEC Daily here, 11 to noon Central Time, every Monday through Friday. And as always, if you want to sponsor our show, we made a lot of jokes about that yesterday. You can still sponsor our show and advertise with us. Caroline.Smith at Southeastern14.com. Contact Caroline, and she will get you all set up if you want to advertise here on the show. So, again, Chris, anything else we want to add here? And we will run through a couple of these comments before we wrap up here in just a minute.
Well, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, and so if you don't have a quick answer for me, don't go digging for it. But any line movements or anything today that caught your eye?
I mean, not today because I probably haven't kept up with it today because
Yeah.
my head has been spinning in terms of us getting out all this great content for the fine folks that watch
Yeah.
Southeastern 14, Chris. So no.
Well, I know one we talked about off air was Kansas State and Missouri. That one, did you tell me Kansas State was about a 1.5 point favorite when lines open some places?
Yeah, it was 1 or 2, I think, right off the bat. About 5 minutes later, it jumped up to 3 or 4 or something. So, yeah, I was surprised by that one because I think that's not that as you'll see in our preview, we've recorded the Missouri Kansas State preview, but I trust Missouri's defense. It's just I think Kansas State is really good, and again, this could be kind of that weird early kickoff type game at Missouri, and maybe Kansas State doesn't come out crisp here. It's a huge game for Missouri. Really think about it, the significance of this game, like we said, because you look at the rest of the schedule coming up for Missouri. It's one of the reasons I said Missouri was going to be 5-0 in my bowl predictions. They get Memphis up next. What's that, in St. Louis, I think, and they go to Vanderbilt,
I think so.
As of right now, I mean, these are all winnable games, right? I think this one is a very tough game for Missouri, even with as good as their defense is. And, again, they didn't look great last week against MTSU, but I still think the defense is good enough to keep them right here with a chance. But yeah, I felt like that line is pretty low for a reason. And so clearly expecting a close game here.
So speaking of lines, let's talk offensive line for a minute. This is an interesting comment. Ole Miss's offensive line was not up to the standard I think Ole Miss wanted it this weekend. from what the buzz I'm hearing coming out of that game. But Ole Miss also had a lot of dudes out, and I don't know what the status of everybody is going into this game. So I think Ole Miss, like we said, like who's the one team that probably felt better against the bar of expectations set for itself coming to the weekend, and that means a lot of things, right? I mean, not only did some teams lose some games like A&M, like Alabama, but you had some teams like Tennessee that didn't play very well. That just, Kentucky was a team that was, I think, down at the half to Eastern Kentucky. So it just was not a good weekend for the league and its expectations. Ole Miss is probably the one team that overshot expectations last weekend, but it came against a backup quarterback. But as a lot of Ole Miss fans have pointed out, Ole Miss had some issues too with a lot of its key receiving targets out. So to me, this weekend was certainly a net positive for Ole Miss. It not only beat the spread that was established with Tulane's quarterback in there. And I don't know why I keep going blank on his name, but I do. I want to call him Michael Penix, and that's Washington's quarterback. But yeah, I think all in all, at Ole Miss, you've got to be pleased with the first two weekends, which included a slaughter of a Mercer team that probably been very good, but Ole Miss's offense looked great in that one. And again, a recurring theme this year has been the league's teams not looking great against really anybody.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, the offensive lines have been a theme, right? People have not been happy with their offensive lines at this point, a lot of people. So, yeah, we'll see if that theme continues. Of course, a lot of good defensive lines in the SEC once you start getting into these games. So, really get put to the test with that there. But, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up for this episode because there is, again, a clear delay on the screen, and I don't want you guys to get frustrated by that. You can listen to this kind of as an audio only. If you want to just turn it on in the background, you can do that. You don't have to necessarily watch, but we appreciate you as always. And like I said, if you want to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, it really helps us out. And a lot more to come here as we start to get ready for the action on Saturday. Lots of predictions, as you've already seen. We'll have Missouri, Kansas State, Arkansas, BYU. Those two prediction videos, preview videos, go up today at some point. So you'll get to see those. The usual morning report with Blaine, which I know you guys are really enjoying. You get that every morning. You get this show every day, 11 a.m. to noon Central Time, and a lot more stuff, of course, as we go throughout the week. Our betting show with Brian Edwards, lots of fun betting nuggets in there if you wanted to get into that. So lots of stuff for everybody, Chris, and we always appreciate everyone who tunes in to the SEC Daily here on Southeastern 14.
Well, apologies for the slightly abbreviated show today. We usually go an hour and sometimes 5 minutes more. I'm presuming the issue is probably on my end, as it usually is. Again, I've got equipment that's literally supposed to arrive today, so hopefully that will fix the situation. But in any case, thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to hit that like button. We'll be back 11 Central to noon Central on Wednesday. We'll do this 5 days a week during football season, so hope you guys will be back for that. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. We'll see you again Wednesday.